there is an absolute consensus from science, and the political momentum has been raising for a long while. Even more, I think that in the business community, it's increasingly clear that if you want to make business, we need to mainstream climate concerns and climate possibilities in order to ensure that the accountability is properly being taken into account, the opportunities and the risk, the cost and the values respond to what nature, science, physics states. For the time being, the spirit of Paris is getting quite well by the civil society. I think that the citizens do understand what we need to make. I think that in particular, not just the traditional activists. Dear Stephen, it's a pleasure to see you, but I would stress that the youth are claiming and stressing that they want to be the owners of their future, so they are expecting much to be done and not just to heritage a great mess, a great problem for their own wealth and prosperity. But the pledges are not enough. So the questions we need to tackle in this session, I would suggest to tackle in this session, is how we can generate a proper momentum and ensuring political leadership in order to facilitate the delivery, the raise of the confidence and credibility among us, so that a kind of positive envy reigns a little bit everywhere and people wills to do more instead of getting trapped in a shy position. There are different issues that have been managed, how we can update and how we can ensure that the update of the NDCs fits for purpose, how we can deliver domestically policies that facilitate the environment in order to make this transformation, how we can facilitate mutual confidence through a transparent and proper accountability, how we can ensure the right partnerships among different stakeholders, public and private, so that we all work towards the same direction. So some suggested actions I would underline. How we can anticipate and plan ahead. That's something we have been trying to promote through the long-term strategies, but how we can combine these long-term strategies consistent with the 1.5 target. I hope the WEO this year is fully consistent, at least in one of their main scenarios with this goal. But how we can articulate these long-term strategies in a consistent manner with shorter and medium goals. Otherwise, it sounds like we are postponing the problem, we are postponing the action, and this is not something that creates additional confidence. We need to provide credible tracking on how we can get these short and midterm goals, which is the role of the roadmaps to decarbonize our economies, which is the role of additional guidance and public debates on how to enhance the role of different players coming from the society. The second comment, how we can raise ambition overall. The current mitigation plans are not enough, so how we can identify and seize the opportunity of our green recovery plans. That's one question, but we have other related issues that have come along these previous remarks we made in the introductory panel. I like it very much, the ideas raised by our new General Director of the WTO, so how we can come along these things, and how we can bring all hands on the deck, how we can decarbonize beyond governments, how all sectors coming together can facilitate this exercise and ensure the alignment and cooperation among all. Finally, how we can track and showcase programs, how we can generate this spirit of things are at reach, even if they are difficult. they make sense. And in that context, the transparency framework being adopted after the Paris Agreement can help a lot, how we can generalize the understanding of what it means. So it is my great pleasure to invite you to make some comments on the different questions being raised by our colleagues in the COP26 presidency and in the International Energy Agency, how we can ensure that collective aspirations are translated into concrete and coherent actions, how we can enhance tracking and how it can help to ensure consistency between short and long-term action, how we can strengthen party and non-party connection, and how can we ensure that governments and non-state actors create the proper environment to ensure our climate goals. And the first person I could invite to take the floor is His Excellency Mr. Mika Lintilä, Minister for Economic Affairs from Finland. Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. And dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, a rapidly growing number of countries are committing to climate neutrality objective. This is excellent and much needed to achieve the objectives of the Paris Agreement. Finland is committed to reaching climate neutrality by 2035. An important question is what is needed globally to make both commitments reality. I will highlight 3 points. My first point is follow the climate science. This means that we need all clean energy solutions. We cannot achieve the target if we don't now use all available low carbon solutions. Secondly, promote new business opportunities. We need more investments in developing and deploying new energy and industry solutions. For example, batteries and a power-to-X solution can provide new business opportunities and jobs to the people. And third, do not greenwash. We need reliable information if we really are on track to reach the targets, how technologies are advancing, what policy measures are in place. Here, the IEA is the most important global partner to help us all in knowing where we are and where we should go. In Finland, we will phase out energy use of coal by 2029. The government has agreed to invest 50% of its EU recovery and resiliency fund financing to climate solutions. And in Finland has also worked closely with the industries. The government has coordinated preparations of low carbon roadmaps in various sectors. And I have to say that I'm proud how determined our companies are in investing in low carbon business opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister, for your comments. And now I would like to invite His Excellency Mr. Eamon Ryan, Minister for Environment, Climate, Communications and Transport, to make his comments on these issues, opportunities and suggestions. Eamon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Teresa. This to work, I think what John Kerry said is so true, that we have to invite people, not force people. It has to be a better economy out of it. And we are at the start of a new industrial revolution. It's a balancing between variable supply and variable demand, and the electrification of everything, in my mind, is the central, and it affects the transport industry revolution and the digital revolution, as well as the clean energy revolution. So to get 3 things, maybe 3 examples that would bring confidence in my mind. Firstly, we're just developing a new climate bill, stronger climate bill for our country. We're committing to half our emissions in the next decade, huge challenge, and net zero. That's important because if it can give political certainty, that this is going to be the policy for 10, 20 years, that reduces the risk, the political risk, and therefore it's easier to invest for the private sector as well as the public, and the cost of capital comes down and the revolution is easier. Secondly, it is the digital revolution as well as the clean energy, because in this balancing between variable supply and variable demand, it's digital capabilities to switch on and off our devices, our air conditioning, our heating, or our managing our car battery transit. So we need confidence in the ethics behind the digital rules, in my mind, to get public acceptance for what we have to do. And thirdly and last, because this balancing is between countries, not just within country for it to work. Teresa, you have a lot of solar, we have a lot of wind where we are. I would love to share the two, to share that power. And it's that trust and confidence in each other to share power, to give us security in this new revolution is what's needed. Those three things would give me confidence that we can deliver on what we are committing to do.
Thank you so much. This is very attractive to exchange a little bit of solar for a little bit of wind. I think that that's something that also needs to be underlined and enjoyed. So now, after Imon, it is my great pleasure to invite His Excellency Mr. Kostas Skrekas, Minister of Environment and Energy from Greece, to take the floor. You also have solar and you also have wind. So, Kostas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, sir. It's true, we have both solar and wind. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure to attend this international summit, which is more relevant and influential than ever, given the global challenges posed by the climate crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic in particular. Let me say that our Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, has strongly emphasized this principle, inspiring ambitious policies and international initiatives. In this context, we have adopted and currently implementing one of the most ambitious energy and climate plans in Europe, strongly oriented towards climate neutrality by 2050. The investments we intend to mobilize by 2030 exceed 40 billion euro. I would like to share with you some of our key principles. First, let me say that we have decided to decarbonize our energy mix at a faster pace than any other European country, phasing out all lignite plants apart from one by 2023. Renewables have already reached 29% of electricity production, and their market share will exceed 60% by the end of the decade. We actively support natural gas as a transitional fuel. We are upgrading and expanding our electricity networks. We are currently completing the legal framework so as to unlock the potential of offshore wind, energy storage, both batteries and hydro pumping. Also, we are promoting energy efficiency via a huge innovation wave, as well as electric vehicles. We facilitate projects that transform our islands into innovation hubs, and we're devising a national strategy for hydrogen. All the above underline that Greece has the climate ambition, the resources and policies to become a hub for green investments. I'm confident that today's summit will contribute to the diffusion of best practices and foster international collaboration. After all, we need to work intensively and consistently, and it is obvious that all of us need to be fully committed to our common global objectives. Thank you very much again. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Kostas, for your comments and how to combine all these elements in this building up a green hub in Greece. And now I would like to invite Mr. Karol Gallick, State Secretary of the Ministry of Economy of the Slovak Republic, to take the floor. Karol?
Dr. Teresa, honorable ministers, dear guests, on behalf of the Slovak Republic, let me thank you for this exceptional opportunity to discuss the need for prompt implementation of political and financial measures to achieve the goal of becoming carbon neutral by mid-century. Slovakia is one of the countries that have committed to carbon neutrality by 2050. The Paris Agreement, the European Green Deal, and 2050 long-term strategy are all documents which laid the basis for creating of our national energy and climate legislation. Its main pillars have become Slovakia's commitment to climate neutrality and the following strategic documents like National Energy and Climate Plan for 2021 to 2030, Low Carbon Development Strategy of the Slovak Republic until 2030 with a view to 2050, and the recently presented Recovery and Resilience Plan of the Slovak Republic. The main goals of the Slovak Republic defined in the mentioned documents include the support for development of renewables, infrastructure, energy efficiency increase, domestic coal phase out by 2023, and combating energy poverty. In response to the current crisis, the Slovak Republic has developed its recovery plan, which is in terms of prioritizing areas, they're financing the main building block of the Slovak economy recovery after the COVID-19 pandemic. The document identifies 5 priority areas: the green economy, education, science and research, health, and public administration and digitalization. Funds totaling more than 6 billion will be used to reform priority areas. Recovery and energy sector reforms financing will be covered by funds under the green economy priority area, which allocates the largest amount of funds, counting almost 2.2 billion euro. The Slovak Republic fully realized the importance of short-term steps necessary for achieving a common long-term ambition. However, the transition to clean energy must be sufficiently ambitious, cost-effective, and must include the attributes of sustainability and inclusivity. Grand ambitions always require great effort, and the goal of becoming carbon neutral by 2050 is undoubtedly one of the greatest global ambitions ever. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments, Carol. And now I would like to invite Ursula Borak, Mrs. Ursula Borak, Deputy Director General from the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energy in Germany. Ursula, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear ministers, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, Parliamentarian State Secretary Thomas Barais, who was supposed to be here now, got sick, but I would like to convey his messages. We are in a key year for energy and climate policy with crucial decisions to take in the run-up to COP26 in November. Therefore, we are very pleased to be part of this important event today to discuss how to achieve the goal of net zero emissions by 2050. It is very encouraging that more and more countries commit to the net zero 2050 target. This net zero alliance needs to keep growing and to include also the big emerging economies. After goal setting, the next challenge is to come up with a consistent and realistic step-by-step plan how to get there. We need international collaboration today more than ever in order to get the energy transition and decarbonization efforts in all sectors on track. And this requires mutual trust that we all are serious about following through with implementing our strategic targets. In Germany, our key instrument to secure that we meet our ambitious national climate goals is the Federal Climate Change Act in force since last year. It creates a new legally binding framework for climate protection in Germany and uniquely combines emission targets, a monitoring system, and immediate remedies in case of non-compliance. For every key emission sector like energy, industry, transport, housing, and agriculture, the Act sets annual emission budgets that decline over time. If emissions exceed the permissible sector budget, the federal ministry responsible for this sector has to present an immediate action program to get the emission reductions back on track. We have just received the figures for 2020 2 weeks ago, and we're happy to announce that Germany slightly exceeds its national climate goal for 2020. We are convinced that such a mechanism to report and monitor our emissions serves Germany well, so that we can take action in a decisive and transparent manner when required, true to our principles of cost efficiency and market-oriented climate policies. To be successful, we all need to accelerate our efforts. The best way we can achieve is to work together. Through international cooperation, we can exchange best practices that could inspire our countries. Furthermore, international transparency would foster the trust in our commitments and actions. Therefore, we should use today's event to send out a clear and strong message to all market participants that the target of greenhouse gas neutrality by 2050 shall reliably guide our political and economic decision-making. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ursula, for your comments. I'm realizing that this is a very important issue. You have all stressed the importance of getting this confidence and planning goals for 2030. And I think that this is one of the things we're trying to push forward in Europe, being quite bold in this type of commitments, which is good in order to build confidence. Now we have some other panelists, other colleagues that come from different perspectives, not from the institutional public action, but from private perspectives, including the assessment of how things evolve for the demands coming from the civil society. So it is my pleasure to invite to Ignacio Sánchez-Galán to make some comments coming from a business that aims to be green and make opportunities out of this. Ignacio, the floor is yours.
We can't hear you. Please unmute yourself.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Teresa, for giving me the floor today. I'm very pleased that 5 years after Paris Agreement, global consensus about the urgency of reaching net zero economies is now higher than ever. I think this ambition will imply a fundamental transformation in the economic models of those countries, moving away from fossil fuels toward renewable energies. And I think that drive to a massive electrification in the final uses. But, and I insist on that words always, words must be turned into action without delay. It's not time of goals, it's time of facts. If we want to reduce emissions fast enough to make the commitment feasible. I think after the COVID-19 crisis, there is a global understanding that only restoring the economies of the past will not bring a sustainable recovery. That is why green investment are in the center of the stimulus package all over the world. But again, we need zero carbon economies, not only low carbon economies. We have to be more ambitious. That will require new policies to mobilize the huge investment needed. We need a clear and efficient energy planning, avoiding the risk of a stranded asset with investment infrastructure that will be obsolete before the end of the life span. For instance, new gas pipelines. Also, plans for storage, including both batteries and large-scale pumped hydro for short and large duration application, as Minister Costa said. Predictable and attractive regulatory frameworks, particularly to incentivize investment in electricity networks, because, using the words of President Timmermans, they are the backbone of the clean energy and key for the integration of renewables and the electrification of residential and industrial uses. We need as well to improve the competitiveness of green hydrogen, essential for full decarbonization, with initial public support to compete with non-green hydrogen, and promoting the deployment with production next to consumption using the existing electricity grids instead to create new pipe infrastructures. Faster and more agile permitting process also will be required. And finally, taxation system must be based on the polluter pays principle. As companies, we have also our own responsibility, investing heavily in green solutions, making climate aspect part of our decision-making process has been commented in this morning, demonstrating our commitment with systematic reporting of our results and creating alliance. I'm pleased to say that we had such an alliance in Ireland, in Germany, in Greece, so which I think is changing our best practice in wind and solar in different countries. At Iberdrola, we have been leading climate action during the last 2 decades. Our global carbon emissions are now only 98 grams per kilowatt hour, which is 3 to 4 times less than our European or American peers. We have closed all our coal and oil power plants in the last few years, and even much less than our targets for 2030. That allows us to accelerate in our investment up to 150 billion euros up to 2030 in renewables, to triple our actual renewables, reaching 100,000 megawatts, increasing our storage, green hydrogen, electrification, and the main uses. And that allows us to be zero carbon in Europe already in 2030, 20 years ahead of European targets, and being a driving force for industry, innovation, and job creation. Key players from all geographies and sectors, public or private, can multiply effectively joining effort. And a strong and coordinated response and close collaboration is required to leave a better world to future generation, as Vice President Timmermans said this morning. I think that is a global obligation. We have the ambition, the technology, the financial resources, and we have leading companies. We cannot look only at 2050 or way up to 2030. We must act now with real action that can be measured and reported to help us deliver the commitments already from now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ignacio. And now we go to Climate Works Foundation. Mrs. Surabhi Menon is going to share with us how you read what we hear, what you hear, and what we expect, and how we can improve the confidence that we need to build in order to accelerate the climate action. Surabhi, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. I'll address a few elements that can build the confidence that collective action can deliver on climate goals. As countries show growing climate ambition, accountability and transparency become more important as we move from commitments to concrete action. Those of us in philanthropy are well placed to support that accountability part, which is trickier for governments because they don't want to be seen as pointing fingers. So I'll highlight 3 things that are needed to ensure that accountability: a list, a dashboard, and a time-bound roadmap. First, it's a list of those short-term indicators that will tell us if we are on track to meet net zero commitments. These would need to be different for corporates, sectors, countries, cities, and investors, but we need all of those indicators in place to help us know collectively if we are on the right trajectory. We at Climate Works are supporting a collaborative effort to build those sets of indicators for all of these actors. Second, a dashboard that would make data more transparent and analysis that can be replicated every year so that we know if we are delivering on the progress, and also to identify where there are gaps or where we need to change course. And third, it is that time scale. We need to be clear about what needs to be in place for the next 10 years till we reach 2030. So in the short term, for the next 1 to 5 years, how we set our financial instruments, disclosures, and accountability to deliver on the change that can avoid the lock-in of high carbon assets and push the laggards to do more will be important. But to sustain the change for beyond the 5 years, we have to work to put in place governance and systems that ensure decisions can survive political cycles through horizontal and vertical coordination of climate action in all parts of the economy and political systems. Because to move to scale, we need the legislation and policies, however unpopular they may be, to provide the signal that governments and investors are behind. I'll end by saying this cannot happen without domestic leadership to support, and allies that can help bolster that domestic leadership will need to come from frontline communities, labor, business, civil society, philanthropy. And we are here to support the IEA and the governments on this transition, and as philanthropy, support that aspiration and accountability for near-term action in the spirit of collaboration that was called for in the previous panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Surabhi. I think that you mentioned also relevant things in terms of expectations of how to fix these timeframes that should be common in order to know when and how we update and provide additional additional commitments, and how participative and inclusive the type of engagement and common action can or should be happening. So thank you for your comments. And now I would like to invite Stefan Singer, who, like me, has three daughters who are asking for lots of things, I've read, which is normal and important. I think that this is a very important driver, and some of the references we should be bearing in mind in order to demand ourselves how credible we are and how much confidence we are providing to the youth. So Stefan, Stefan is the Senior Climate Science and Global Energy Policy Advisor in Climate Action Network. Sorry, I didn't introduce you properly at the beginning. Stefan, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa. I'm not talking about my daughters here. It's a different story. Well, dear friends, ministers, and colleagues, let me thank you on behalf of the Climate Action Network International, which represents about 1,500 NGOs, civil society organizations worldwide, to give me the opportunity. As we talk about here and giving input to the IEA upcoming 1.5C report, I think we have been working on that one, and I think it's for us of utmost importance to tell you that given the authority in the global energy community of the IEA and the annual World Energy Outlook, the WAO, as one of the most influential bodies and publications, respectively, we urge the IEA, please, to put the upcoming report on 1.5C targets and net zero in the context and at the heart of a 1.5C agreement. That's very, very important, not for us, I think, for the world to realize. And make that WAO a driver, and beyond 2021, a driver for this report in line with sustainability, in line with credibility. That's very important for us. Otherwise, I think the BAO would contribute unwillingly and not on purpose to imply that the projections of the current World Energy Outlook scenarios would imply climate disasters significantly beyond 1.5C. I know this is not intended, but that's what's in there. Therefore, governments need to focus on real zero carbon solutions, on energy pathways, embarking on a managed and full phase out of full fossil fuels worldwide by 2050 latest, and much earlier in rich countries, in line with equity and based on a just transition. We believe that's very important. Net zero targets that rely on unrealistic projections of carbon capture and storage, nuclear power, or vast plantations to legitimize continued fossil fuel use are, simply speaking, dangerous. To stay on a safe, sustainable trajectory for 1.5C for 2030, and again, I repeat what others have said, the target must be the next 10 years. Otherwise, we lose the net zero targets in the long term. Let's be very honest and one in line with science. We need early, ambitious, and clean renewable energy and energy efficiency deployments, including hydrogen, renewable hydrogen. The IPCC suggested in its 1.5C landmark report a reduction of CO2 emissions of about 50%. That's strong, that's ambitious, I know that one, but that's necessary if we want to stick to the commitments. By 2030, compared to 2019, that's a global benchmark, particularly for large and rich carbon polluters. This is doable, technologically and economically. It's a moral paradigm. Let's keep that in mind, a moral paradigm. It saves lives and protects ecosystem and reduces non-climate impacts of fossil fuels as well. We have about 9 million people dying annually from fossil fuel pollutions, from air pollutions. Let's keep that in mind. That goes beyond climate. Last point, I know I'm running out of time, is if you allow to me on the global context, I think it's very important that we keep in mind it's significant to enhance support for poorer countries, both by grants and investments by richer nations and financial institutions, because we're all in the same boat. And it's a matter of solidarity and a matter of no one should be left behind. And we need to grow our financial contribution from rich countries, I'm not saying only the EU, up to 300 to 500 billion euros per year annually for clean solutions in developing countries. That's what science is coming up in order to meet the 1.5C challenge. Let's forget that one, please. It's a matter of solidarity. No one should be left behind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stefan, for your comments. Very clear and right to the point comments. And now the last person in my list is Baroness Brienne Worthington, the co-director of Quadrature Climate Foundation. Baroness, the floor is yours.
Many thanks, honourable ministers and guests at this workshop. I'm very pleased to join to just offer some very quick comments from the perspective of philanthropy. I think you will notice that there is more philanthropic money arriving to help in the climate debate. And we are a new foundation based in the UK, but with a global remit. And we are just one of many new foundations that are coming to spend their resources to help. So I think when we talk about confidence to deliver, we should be looking at how we can collaborate between, obviously, member states, but the private sector and the philanthropic sector, where really creative partnerships can be brought together to de-risk investment and help speed the transition. I think we certainly see this problem as, by and large, a political problem, and that there is no substitute for a really clear policy framework to drive investment. We will make progress, I think, with finance moving towards green investment, but the only way that we can make those financial flows flow to trillions is if those projects and those options are profitable. And many times it will take government's intervention to de-risk those investments and to unlock that private capital. And we as a foundation are committed to trying to find ways to help governments to do this, to pass policies, to introduce new measures that can help unlock that finance from the private sector. I would just say that as a foundation new into this space, we're very focused on it being a global challenge. And as most of us on this call today are coming from a European perspective, we would just like to celebrate Europe's progress to date in leading the way in setting a very clear legislative framework around the decarbonisation challenge. There's lots that people can learn from Europe's approach, but we must also be sensitive to the different perspectives of different regions. And specifically, we heard from the Indian minister this morning, the degree of emotion there is about the need for Europe to keep going faster and to demonstrating that the costs can be brought down in the technologies that they will need to decarbonise their economy. So Europe is doing well, but it could do more. And we must, I think, now get into the practical projects that can decarbonise all of our industrial sectors and our agriculture to show that a net zero economy is possible. We can do this if we embrace the widest range of technologies. And I would hope that Europe will embrace the widest range of routes to zero carbon and not seek to exclude particular technologies. And with that, I'd like to hand back and say thank you for all your comments and for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Baroness, for your comments, which are very important. The engagement of the philanthropics has been absolutely crucial in this broader transformation and understanding why it is worthy, necessary, and a kind of not only moral demand, as Stephen was saying, but also a kind of imperative in order to drive properly things. Understanding, as you said, and probably this is something that is missing in the way we have shaped this panel, that there are other perspectives and other emotions in other regions of the world. So that is also very important in order to ensure that the confidence we understand among each other is not just concentrated in the same family of visions, perspectives, and emotions, but it is also built among different sensitiveness, which is an important element. So, Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I have understood this exercise properly, I am supposed to wrap up a little bit with some of the main messages I have heard from all our colleagues in this panel, and then we will be reporting to the plenary in less than 10 minutes. Is it right?
That's perfectly correct. So we have, I'm told just now, we have 9 minutes, actually 8 now. If there are any further interventions from the panelists that want to add something, and the idea is indeed that you as a chairwoman of this session will report back to plenary what are the key findings.
Okay, perfect, Laura, thank you. So I would like to invite to all of you, if there is something you have missed in your comments or that has been inspired by the comments coming from others. And I have been taking some notes, and I would like to share with you some of the ideas I've penciled in my paper. So first, any additional comments coming from any of you? It seems we have heard
Question.
Stefan, please go ahead.
Yeah, a short question. How do we deal with the financial sector? Because I think it needs legislation. What we have seen last week is that a new survey came out with a couple of NGOs and academics showing that since Paris, each year increasing, about 60 international private banks have funded up to $4 trillion in 5 years cumulatively to the fossil fuel sector. And the trend is growing since Paris. Mostly from the US, I know. That might change under Biden, but still. There is a big gap in the private sector. We talked much about the public sector. I think there are lots of changes happening. That's good with the World Bank and others, but the private sector is still lagging behind significantly and does what it should not do.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. So unless there is any additional comment, I share with you some of the notes I have taken with the I guess some of the most relevant messages, all of them important, but some of the most relevant messages you have underlined in your comments, in your contributions to this session. Starting by a positive message, we need to enhance and to make visible the business opportunities so that the business community becomes a really ally in this transformation, and ensuring much more consistency among the different policies so that any type of political risk can be lower, and the environment we create for the decision-making processes becomes easier and more obvious. I think that there is a clear understanding of the importance of identifying short-term and long-term goals. So short-term is important in order to make the tracking, in order to provide credibility to domestic action, in order to be able to ensure that transparency and fulfillment of the different references along time in our pathways, in our roadmaps is going reasonably well, or we can have a chance to correct, to enhance, to accelerate in case there is any type of deviation or some additional opportunities we identify. I think that this idea of building a proper environment context and frameworks has come in different type of settings, and I think that there has been also some relevant comment coming from Imon when saying that it is not just a question of identifying how we can work domestically with the different stakeholders, but also between different countries and different regions, how we can share the opportunities among all of us in order, for instance, to build this notion of hubs of climate action. I go a little bit beyond what Costas said, but I think that this is an idea which is very powerful, how we can create this type of concept of partnership and partnership motivated by action, ongoing action. There have been very interesting comments coming from you also around the idea of the reasons why we need to act, how we need to be inclusive and ensure that all the different visions take part in the discussion domestically. And then I want to stress, to pick up the idea coming from Baroness Worthington, also taking into consideration that things can be perceived in a very different manner from some regions, some cultures, and others. And this is something also to be taken into consideration if what we want to build is mutual confidence among the different regions. Strong messages around two critical fields of action. At the end, Stefan, the finance, the money, where we invest or where we waste our money is relevant. So the question mark on how we can ensure that the money is properly invested. So this idea of how to ensure a much more clear engagement and consistency coming from the financial sector. And just a small piece of homework for Laura and all her colleagues in the International Energy Agency. If there is a question mark to be responded in this session around the role of the International Energy Agency, is a question that has been commented along the time in many occasions, but I think it is an interesting opportunity to insist on it today. It could be very important that in order to make full use of all the capacities of the International Energy Agency in this scenario, we can count on a 1.5 scenario when you prepare your world energy outlook, so that we can assess and identify where and how we can strengthen around initiatives. And those could be, and apologies if I have missed any important thing you really want me to stress, the comments that I will use to prepare my report to the plenary. But final word, if you have the impression that I missed something which is really, really important, please raise your hand, and it would be my pleasure to take it among the different notes I have right now. Colleagues, anything missing? Ignacio? Yes?
I would like to insist on the sense of urgency. So I think it has been said during the morning, but I think it's what is not being done during this decade. Probably we are going not to reach the target 2050. We are not already doing our best during 2030. And I think at this point is not a question to make things a bit better. It's to make the things properly, not improving, but changing completely that one.
Fantastic, perfect. Okay, I think that we have run out of time. Laura, is everything okay? We can shift to the plenary.
We will. My understanding is that we will be automatically shifting exactly 1 minute. So you are perfect, and thanks to everyone for being so disciplined with time. Thank you all.